아, 인터넷이 왜 이렇게 느리지? 키케! 지금 인터넷 쓰고 있어? 키케, 인터넷 너무 많이 쓰지 마. 나 지금 일하고 있단 말이야. 걱정 마. 일이 다 끝나면 다시 줄게. Welcome back to another episode. In the last episode, we learned about honorific speech, honorific verbs, making commands with seo, as well as honorific nouns. But there's one more concept that we still need to learn in order to better understand Korean politeness levels, and that's humble speech. Humble speech is a lot like honorific speech in that it's completely separate from casual speech and the yo form. We can make sentences that use both casual speech and honorifics at the same time, and we can also have sentences that use casual speech with humble speech. But while honorific speech is used to show extra respect to people who we're talking about, humble speech is used to show humility from the person who is speaking. What that means is, humble speech is kind of like lowering yourself down while talking about someone else. And because of the way it works, humble speech is often used together with honorific speech. For example, take a look at this sentence. 내일 선물을 줄 거예요. I will give you a present tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with this sentence, but what if the person we're giving the present to is someone who we'd want to show extra respect to, such as to a teacher or to anyone who we'd use honorifics when talking about? We can use a humble verb to show that we're respecting the teacher by lowering our own status. For example, 내일 선물을 드릴 거예요. I will give you a present tomorrow. This sentence has the same meaning as the first one, only we've changed the verb 주다 to give into 드리다, which is the humble verb form of 주다. Using 드리다 instead shows humility from the speaker toward the person who he or she is talking about. Here's another example. 내일 봐요. I'll see you tomorrow. But what if we're saying this sentence to and also about our boss? Although we can of course change the yo form to the nida form, that still wouldn't be showing humility toward the boss. So instead we can change the verb 보다 into the humble verb 뵈다. Now let's look at the sentence again. 내일 봬요. I'll see you tomorrow. The humble verb form of 보다 is 뵈다, or sometimes 뵙다, and this verb conjugates in the yo form as 봬요. So the two sentences have the same literal meaning, but the second sentence with 뵈다 is as if the speaker is lowering themselves when speaking about their boss. It shows humility to the boss, and that's why these are called humble verbs. So let's do a quick recap. Using honorific verbs is like the speaker is showing extra respect toward the person who they're talking about. And using a humble verb is kind of like the speaker is also bowing down toward the person who they're talking about. So because of this, you'll never use humble speech when someone else is doing something for you, because that would be figuratively making them bow down to you, unless you're a crazy dictator or something. We've covered the humble verbs 드리다 and 뵈다, and we're actually done with humble verbs. These are the only two we'll need to know. So if you understand how to use them, we can move on to our next topic, particles. When you're speaking honorifically or humbly, you're showing extra respect to the person that you're talking about. But there are more ways to do this than only using honorific verbs and honorific nouns. There are also a few different particles that you'll want to use to show extra respect toward whatever they come after. Here are those particles. You can pause the video and write them down. The first one is the subject marker, 이 or 가. Instead of this, use 께서. So let's go back to an earlier example from the previous lessons. 아버지께서 집에 안 계세요. Dad is not at home. While we could also say 아버지가 and it would be grammatically correct, using 께서 is much better because using 이 and 가 doesn't show any additional respect. The second one is the topic marker, 은 or 는. Instead of these, use 께서는. So instead of saying 아버지는, say 아버지께서는. It's longer to say, but it shows respect, and it should be used whenever you're using honorific verbs to talk about someone. Here's an example. 이제 할머니께서는 주무실 거예요. Grandma will sleep now. And the third one, 께 is used instead of ege, meaning to or from, and instead of ege서, meaning from. So instead of saying 선생님에게, say 선생님께 when you're using honorific and humble speech. Here's an example. 선생님께 선물을 드렸어요. I gave the teacher a present. This sentence has the same grammatical meaning as 선생님에게 선물을 줬어요, but it shows not only extra respect by using 게, but humility by using the verb 드리다 instead of the normal verb 주다. Honorific speech and humble speech can be confusing at first because English doesn't have this concept, but they're essential to speaking Korean like a native. Not being a Korean means that you won't be held to the same standard as a Korean would, and often mistakes will be forgiven. But the more Korean you're able to speak, the more that Koreans will expect you to know how to use honorific and humble speech correctly. It might take a lot of practice to feel comfortable, but that's okay. These concepts can only be mastered through regular practice and review. I'd recommend rewatching this video, as well as the previous one, to review how to use both honorific and humble speech. And that's all for today. You can also learn more about this lesson in the extended PDF version, which is available to download for free on my website. And remember that new videos are uploaded to this channel every week, so if you like what you see, click subscribe and follow along. 그럼 다음에 또 봐. 에헤헤.